Well, welcome, Board Member Williams, Dave Williams.
Thank you.
I'm going to call you Dave for the rest of this because that's how employees know you, of course, and you're very approachable, so welcome. This is meant to get to know you a little bit better and have the general public get to know you a little bit better. So we're going to ask you a few questions. First, I want to start with your background. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I grew up in northern Indiana, the cornfields, and went to elementary and high school there, and then ended up going to Purdue University. I got a bachelor's and a master's in civil engineering, and in my master's program, midway through the master's program, they had the first draft lottery in 1969, and I had a low draft number. And I was going to be drafted out of graduate school, but I found out that they were looking for sanitary engineers, water and wastewater engineers of all things, and that was my specialty, civil, water, wastewater engineering. So I was allowed to finish graduate school, ended up getting a direct commission, and then I got my orders, and most of my class went to Germany, Okinawa, or Vietnam, and I got this assignment, said Fort Baker, and I thought, where in the heck is Fort Baker? Well, Fort Baker is the Golden Gate National Recreation Area, but back in the early 70s, it was Fort Baker, headquarters for the 6th U.S. Army Medical Laboratory. So I packed up everything I owned in my '65 Dodge Coronet, drove out to California, and have been here ever since.
Well, you're very rooted in this community. I know that. That's one of the reasons I believe you've probably ran for the board. You feel a lot of connection to the local area. So tell me a little bit about your background recently. You were working for BACWA. You worked with Bay Area water agencies. Talk a little bit about that role as the executive director and other things, and maybe connect Central Sand to that.
I worked in the Bay Area in the water wastewater industry since 1973, and for 20 years I was director of wastewater at East Bay Mud, so I got to learn firsthand all of the complexities of running a wastewater utility. And then also in that role I was able to participate in professional organizations, California Association of Sanitation Agencies, which is a nonprofit that includes most of the major wastewater utilities in California, and I was president of CASA and worked on legislative and regulatory issues. And then I also got involved nationally, and I was the president of the National Association of Clean Water Agencies back in Washington, D.C., which includes all the major metropolitan wastewater agencies. And then I left East Bay Mud after 20 years and went to work as the executive director of the Bay Area Clean Water Agencies, which is an association of every wastewater utility in the 9-county Bay Area.
Wow.
And we worked on regulatory issues, trying to ensure that regulations, which are certainly needed, but are based on sound science. And so that was a real challenge. I enjoyed it though. Good people. Really enjoyed working with the people.
You know, my takeaway from BACWA and CASA and NACWA, very dedicated people, very smart people, all trying to run in the right direction for the good of the, I would say, the customer base. How do you feel about that?
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, just really, really good people. And the thing that impressed me about working on these watershed permits, so wastewater utilities generally have their own permit. It's a federal permit, and it sets limits such that they treat the wastewater to a standard such as protective of the beneficial uses of the receiving water, like fishing, swimming, boating, that type of thing. But the nutrient permit was a watershed permit, so it involved all the agencies. And I was just amazed that the agencies put aside some of their personal agency issues and looked at the greater good of the region. And that was very gratifying.
So you've had a global perspective, you've had a state perspective, you've served on the board how many years for Central San?
Just over 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
Where does Central San fall? How do we rate amongst our peers?
Well, I think the one thing, my sense at Central San is we don't start out with the goal of being the best, the leader of all the agencies. We start out to go with making intelligence decisions, accomplishing our mission of protecting the public health and the environment, serving our ratepayers well, and as a result of that, we do get recognized as a very excellent agency. We're an award-winning agency, kind of leaders in the industry in the Bay Area, and I think Central San certainly ranks as a leader in the Bay Area.
10 years on the board, long time.
Yep.
You've got a couple more years in your term, I know
Yep.
that. What program, as you look back over the 10 years, what program, what project really stands out as something that you're most proud of?
Well, there's, it's only a 30-minute interview. There's too many, but...
You're only allowed one, maybe two,
well,
but just one.
I'll mention several. First of all, a wastewater utility is very infrastructure intensive.
Okay.
So we have a first-rate capital improvement O&M budget that is our one-year budget.
O&M for
Operation and maintenance.
operation maintenance.
Operation and maintenance. And then we have a 10-year capital improvement plan for infrastructure that looks out 10 years. And Central San and the board supported doing a very, very comprehensive master plan about 4 years ago that looked at all of our assets and came up with this 10-year plan. And the other things that we've done that I think are really kind of innovative, we have our Citizens Academy. This year it's virtual, but we had 4 Citizens Academy. We're like 40 people come to Central San, actually in this room, and we tell them about their wastewater utility, all about it, the infrastructure, the finances, and we get a lot of kudos from the public who participate in that. They're very grateful to have that opportunity to learn. Other things that we do is we have a strategic plan. So a strategic plan that, and I'm particularly proud of the strategic plan. So it has, at the high level, 6 goals, and those are set by the board. And then under those 6 goals, the plan, it's updated every 2 years, has strategies to accomplish those goals and then specific objectives to accomplish on a year-over-year basis.
You know, as an employee, I will say that it's very clear what the standards are, and it feels like very high standards. And that seems to be the board's focus, that we hold ourselves to those highest level standards, not just amongst our peer, but to ourselves as well. Can you speak a little bit about that, like how you set those standards?
Yeah, so we actually lean on staff a lot to, so the direction from the board is we have this strategic plan, we have these goals, and then staff, you develop the strategies and the objectives. And by the way, we would like to have this dashboard, and in this dashboard, we would like to have enough information that on standards that we're trying to accomplish, like education programs, household hazardous waste recycling, wastewater recycling, sanitary sewer overflow preventions, call-out times, customer response times. So we ask staff to develop these standards, and then we set targets. And so when the targets are set and the standards are there, then the board can monitor, and we get quarterly updates, and then staff tells us, are we meeting that standard, the target? And if not, why not? And this is the red, yellow, green. So when the board reviews that, obviously there's a lot of green and we like that, and there's some red and some yellow, and we ask about that. And then if the target for the standard is too high, we would adjust it.
Right.
But it's a really good document for the board to, I joke that the board could just look at this document on a quarterly basis and kind of have their finger on the pulse as to how the district is doing.
And it's available on our website.
It's
so
available,
you can take
right.
a look at our strategic
Right.
plan and where we sit right now. I'm going to switch gears a bit. I think we look pretty good for 75. As you know, not us, Central San
Yeah.
is turning 75
Yep.
years old. We're really excited. This is going to be on our anniversary website and beyond. Talk about what, as a district, what does 75 years mean? I mean, is that a long term? We've got some of our pipes are probably over 75 years of age and need replacement. We've got another 75 years in front of us, if not more.
More.
Right?
Right.
More. Okay.
Right.
So talk about what an agency thinks about at 75 years and then how they plan for the next 75 years when it comes to infrastructure.
Right, so that's a big issue with wastewater agencies that through sewers collect the wastewater from people's homes. Largely the sewers go down the middle of the street. Sometimes they're in backyard easements, and they all flow through this intricate maze of pipes that ultimately end up at the treatment plant at the intersection of Highway 4 and 680, where it's treated to high standards that meet rigid EPA permit conditions, and then it's either recycled or discharged to the receiving water such that it protects the beneficial use of the receiving water, which is Suisun Bay. And that's through a long outfall from the treatment plant out to Suisun Bay. So all of these agencies started installing pipes. And if you look at the distribution of pipes installed over years, you'll see that a lot of the pipes are old, right? So a 75-year-old pipe. And the interesting thing about a 75-year-old pipe can last 100 years.
Right.
It can last well over 100 years. The key is asset management, and we have a very rigorous asset management program, not only for the collection system, which is all the pipes, but the treatment plant, which is very mechanically intensive. So we have used a lot of energy. We treat the wastewater with a lot of equipment, and we have all of those assets categorized, and then they roll up into the master plan, and they create that $1 billion 10-year capital plan for infrastructure.
I think most people would be very surprised that we know where every joint is, where every manhole is, where every inch of pipe is, and that's how we prioritize, right? And we're always looking at those pipes. Right,
and so folks don't really understand probably the magnitude, but so the pipes, they go out in the far-reaching areas, they're smaller, 6-inch, 8-inch, 12-inch, and so forth. By the time they get to the treatment plant, they're over 100 inches in diameter.
So you can stand in them.
Yeah, you can stand in them. And the total length of the pipes are 1,500 miles. That's a lot of pipe.
That's more than most agencies.
Yes, it is. It's considered a large collection system. Like I said, it's a very infrastructure-intensive endeavor that wastewater utilities undertake.
At 75, you take a lot of stock on how things are working. Tell me, what's our biggest challenge that's facing Central San?
I think one of the biggest challenge of any infrastructure-intensive utility is financial planning. So, and we're very good at it. We have award-winning financial plans. Other liabilities are the regulatory environment. We're heavily regulated. We have, I believe, all total probably about 100 permits, and we have to meet those permits. So we have air permits, water permits, solids permits, and we do a very good job. We're actually award-winning in that area as well in terms of meeting our water permit. We've done it for 20 years straight. And But we have regulations on the horizon that we're pretty sure that are ultimately going to be imposed. So that means we need to be able to pay for those. So things like nutrients. So the bay is pretty resilient to nutrients, nitrogen and phosphor. If you get too much in a body like San Francisco Bay, it'll turn green with algae. You don't want that. And so through the BACWA organization, all of the wastewater agencies had chipped in millions and millions of dollars to undertake scientific studies to determine the resilience of the bay and what ultimately needs to be done. We have other regulations out there. There's polyfluoroalkyl substances known as PFAS, and they're also known as the forever chemicals. They were developed decades ago.
There's movies about this right now.
There are movies about that, Dark Waters. So PFAS are basically everywhere. They're in your home, they're in your cooking nonstick pans, they're on your furniture for
carpet
coatings, they're in carpet. It is ubiquitous, it's everywhere. There's other regulations in terms of air regulations, making sure that no toxics are released into the environment. So all of the regulations are a big challenge going forward. Disaster preparedness. We all know there's going to be a big earthquake at some point, and we've spent a lot of time and effort preparing so that we can be resilient to that. There's a lot of challenges. They just don't go away.
The board deals with a lot of weighty items. You've just listed a number of them, but I don't want to end this interview on a negative tone. I want it positive, because that's something you do every 2 weeks when you're at the board meeting, you're dealing with all these. What's something that you're most proud of about Central San? Something you'd like the audience to know?
The positive takeaway is, in my years on the board, I've been very impressed with my fellow board members, and they really try to do the right thing for the ratepayers. So the board doesn't own this utility. The ratepayers, all the people, and there's 500,000 of them, the people that we serve in Central County, they own the utility. They elect the board of directors to make decisions on their behalf, because obviously they're coming home tired, taking care of the kids, helping them with homework. They don't have time to worry about what's happening. They want to flush the toilet, and they want it to be ensured that it's properly treated and disposed of or recycled. And that feels good. It feels like we have a really excellent wastewater utility that the public, as you know, as our communications manager, oftentimes doesn't know what Central San, who Central San is, but if they did know, they would be proud that their utility is a very well-run utility.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Thank you for letting us get to know you a little bit better.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you, Dave. Dave Williams, a board member.